Welcome, everybody, to today's presentation entitled Unlock Growth Potential by Transforming Your AP Processes with Automation, brought to you today by Ledgerable, a BTerrell company in our 35th year of upgrading small and mid-sized general and specialty contractors from QuickBooks or a legacy on-premises construction financial management application to Sage Intacct Construction, the only construction accounting application ever named by the AICPA as their preferred provider of construction financial management applications. I'm Brian Terrell, managing partner of Ledgerable, once again a BTerrell company, and joined today by Jared Moss. Jared is the Central Region Head of Sales at Hughes and Ledgerable's exclusive representative for use for Sage Intacct Construction, which is our preferred provider for construction accounts payable automation. Before I turn it over to Jared for today's presentation, let's cover a few housekeeping items. If you're here for continuing professional education, today's presentation qualifies for 1 hour of credit, and all we ask is that you respond to the polling questions that you'll see pop up on your screen from time to time, and please complete our post-webinar evaluation form. Once again, respond to the polling questions that pop up from time to time and complete our post-webinar evaluation form. What will those polling questions look like and how should you respond? Here's an example that will pop up on your screen now. Notice that this question not only serves as practice for the 3 questions that will continue throughout Jared's presentation, this question also serves a purpose to help us recognize who in today's audience will be looking forward to receiving CPE credit. So please take a moment to choose yes if you're here, not only for Jared's excellent information, but also the CPE credit, and no if you're not. And then one final slide of housekeeping items. We've disabled audio for today's presentation, not because we're not looking forward to answering your questions. Please submit your questions using the Zoom Q&A function that you'll see there on the Zoom toolbar. Once you enter those questions, we'll collect those and get those answered at the end of today's presentation. Also, we're recording the webinar so that you can receive a link in the next couple of days with the entire content. You don't have to take screenshots or notes. So just sit back and relax and know that you'll receive that link between now and the next 3 or 4 days. And you can also share that with any colleagues who were unable to join us today. Without any further ado, and with those housekeeping details out of the way, let me now turn over today's presentation to Jared. Jared?
Yes, thank you, Brian, and hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, where we're going to talk about how AP automation is your secret weapon for enhancing your construction firm. I am really excited to be here today so that you can very quickly gain efficiency in your AP and P2P processes in 2025 and move on into the future. Today, we're going to cover the state of AP in construction, the biggest pain points, real-world case studies showing what's possible, and we'll answer your questions live. Plus, like Brian mentioned, we'll ask a few poll questions to keep things interactive. All right, so here is the first poll question. And so, how would you describe the current level of automation of your AP department? I will tell you from the many conversations I've had with people in the construction world and the many conferences I've also attended, I really see most construction companies really in the bottom 2, the partially automated or still fully manual. So we'll be interested to see how everybody here votes that way. But at the end of the day, there's no wrong answer to this question. It's just where you sit today. All right. So if you work in the construction industry, you already know that managing AP is anything but straightforward. Between juggling subcontractors, materials, tight timelines, and compliance requirements, the AP function plays a critical role in keeping projects on track and cash flow under control. Construction finance is complex. You've got multiple job sites, fragmented teams, fluctuating cost, and increasingly tight margins. AP is the engine that keeps operations moving. But if that engine is sputtering, the whole operation feels it. Today, efficiency isn't optimal. Firms that streamline AP gain faster insights, avoid costly mistakes, and can react to changes much more quickly. So let's talk about some of the top financial challenges facing construction firms today, issues that put real pressure on finance teams and make AP operations more complex than ever. First, we'll talk about cost volatility. The construction industry is highly susceptible to sudden swings in material prices, whether it's steel, lumber, or fuel. Those fluctuations can drastically impact project budgets, and AP departments are often the first to feel the ripple effect. Paying vendors on outdated POs or tracking invoice changes manually just doesn't cut it anymore. Now, from job costing to compliance audits, construction finance teams need granular, project-level data. Owners, GCs, and regulators all want transparency. Where did every dollar go, how it was spent, and why? That means AP needs to generate precise reports tied to specific jobs, phases, or cost codes. Not always easy when you're drowning in paper or juggling multiple systems. Then there's a labor shortage. We're not just talking about workers on the job site. Finance and back office roles are also tough to fill. That puts more strain on already stretched AP teams, leading to processing delays, errors, and burnout. With fewer hands to handle the workload, efficiency becomes more than a goal, it becomes a necessity. Another big hurdle that we see is the paid when paid model. This practice, where subcontractors only get paid after the GC gets paid, can create uncertainty and cause cash flow bottlenecks. So AP must walk a tightrope, keeping subs satisfied while still aligning payment timings with incoming funds. It requires visibility, coordination, and careful timing to avoid strained relationships or even work stoppages. And also, the market is competitive. Margins are thin. To win bids, firms must often price very aggressively, which leaves very little room for financial inefficiencies. Any delays in invoice processing, missed early payment discounts, fraudulent attempts, or duplicate payments can seriously eat into your profit margins. And that brings us to the point here. Cash flow is king. Without accurate AP data, it's nearly impossible to forecast properly. Manual processes delay the visibility you need. The best advice I can give you: automate the capture and tracking of every single invoice from day one, so you're never guessing where your cash stands. Your cash flow is the lifeline of construction operation. It funds everything: subcontractor payments, material orders, and project schedules. Delays or mismanagements can halt progress and damage your vendor relationships. Your financial oversight is more critical than ever because economic uncertainty and tight margins demand real-time cash flow visibility. Finance leaders need accurate data to make timely, strategic decisions. Manual AP process can create blind spots within your cash flow. There can be delayed invoice approvals and scattered paperwork. They slow down these insights that are needed. Inaccurate or outdated data can also make forecasting unreliable. And poor visibility equals poor decision making. Without clear insight into liabilities and payment timing, you risk missing early payment discounts, overdrafting or cash shortages, or even project delays due to funding gaps. So what is it like out there for the construction industry right now? I'm sure some of you out there are feeling some of these pains. Just to give you an idea, 84% of firms still rely on paper or semi-automated AP processes. That's huge. With 1 in 3 invoices having errors, you're not just wasting your time fixing mistakes, you're wasting money. One firm I worked with found that correcting AP errors costs them an average of $500 per mistake once you factor in labor and vendor penalties. And then 60% of finance teams report, chasing invoices at their top bottleneck drains their time. They spend way too much trying to get the invoices approved and seeing where the invoice is in the workflow. So let's go to our next poll question. What is your biggest AP challenge? High costs, low approvals, errors, fraud risk. Now I would tell you, choose the one that hurts your organization the most. You want to identify, that's the first one that you want to fix. Again, no wrong answers here, because we hear all of these at every single show that we attend. I think one of the ones I probably hear the most is really the invoice approval cycle times, because the relationships that you have with your vendors and your subcontractors and everybody inside of your environment, people don't want to risk that, and slowing down approval can slow down payments. So let's be clear today. Finance leaders are looking for more than just processing power. They want intelligence from their AP departments. That means actionable insights, not just piles of approved invoices. So here's what's at the top of their list. Finance needs to know what's been paid, what's pending, what's overdue now, not at month end, not after digging through spreadsheets, not after they ask. They need to see it real time and right now. Longer processing times delay financial reporting and they choke cash flow. Speed is everything, and automation is the key to faster, more reliable throughput, which also means better visibility. And then manual processes are not only slow, they're error prone. Finance wants digital workflows that remove the risk of costly mistakes and wasted effort. And then more and more companies need mobile and remote access, because with distributed teams and hybrid work models, mobile approvals are no longer a luxury, they're a requirement. If you want to shorten cycle times, mobile-first tools are a must. And then in construction, understanding cost at the project level is essential. AP systems should make it easy to tag, track, and report on every invoice by job, phase, or cost code. And then lastly, strategic insights, not just transactions. What I mean by that is finance wants to use AP data to make smarter decisions, like managing cash flow, forecasting liabilities, and identifying cost-saving opportunities. One tip I would give for you around some of the things on this slide: to make the most impact, collecting data isn't enough. You need to be able to turn that data into action. There could be potentially ERP limitations, because a lot of ERP modules often fall short for our construction-specific AP needs, which we'll talk about more here in a minute. You also want to look at automated payments. So you want to look at automating the full purchase-to-pay process to bring your firm into truly optimized financial placement. And then you don't want to fall behind. Firms that lag behind on new technology, they're at a growing disadvantage, not just from a cash flow and bidding prospect, but for candidates as well. Employees want to work with firms that embrace technology. So one example, I was working with a firm and I was advising them to start tracking their average approval times by project manager, just to see, what it would look like. Seeing that data made the slower approvers step up and note that, hey, they can see how long it's taking from person to person, and now their cycle times have dropped by over 30%, which is a huge time savings. So ERPs, they're powerful, but they're not designed specifically for AP and construction. Relying on them isn't going to be enough. The reality is they just weren't built for AP. They often lack intelligent capture, flexible workflows, and specialized payment options. An AP automation system can take these to a more customized and efficient level. And I always recommend that you want a to layer a purpose-built AP automation system onto your AP or ERP to fill the gaps and then truly unlock the system's full value that it can bring to your organization. So these types of AP shortcomings are holding companies back. Manual AP processes delay approvals and disrupt job costing tracking. I've seen projects fall weeks behind because a subcontractor didn't get paid on time, all due to a lost paper invoice. Don't let AP be the bottleneck. But now on the flip side, here's how. Don't just take my word for it. Here are some of the benefits when you jump to an AP automation solution like Use. Firms that automate AP see 80% faster processing of invoices, 75% fewer errors, lower cost per invoice processing, greater real-time visibility, better reporting, and they can get mobile-friendly approvals even across remote job sites. We even see customers accessing vendor statement reconciliation, reducing their time spending going through vendor statements, and using Use Protect for fraud prevention, ensuring they're not getting hit for invoices that they shouldn't be paying. So you also want to look for solutions like Use that offer real-time dashboards, because what everyone sees, what matters the most, and that visibility, again, I've said it probably 4 or 5 times now, is critical. And then not all systems are created equally. A fully integrated AP system eliminates manual rework and ensures cost codes, vendors, and project data stay aligned. It supports multiple payment types. It ensures compliance and keeps your team audit ready. And it enables a touchless AP workflow. It also ensures that the data passing between your ERP and your AP system is a bidirectional sync, ensuring that the information that is in both systems is up to date, real time, and you have visibility regardless of your position within the company, which again then helps the leaders of those organizations understand their cash flow and make timely decisions. I would also tell you that as you go through and you look at things like this, involve your project managers in setting up integrations, because they're going to be the ones relying on a lot of that data every single day. So let's unpack now the 7 biggest pain points that slow down construction firms. And these are the issues that we really need to fix if we want faster cash flow and healthier projects. So here's our next poll question. Which of the following is your biggest barrier to automating AP processes? Is it the budget, resources, management support, or really finding the right fit? Again, no wrong answers here. A lot of times we hear it's the lack of budget and lack of IT. And I will tell you, from a budget standpoint, we work with companies to figure out the return on the investment, so how and why it makes sense to move forward with AP automation, because you get so much back. But on the IT side, Use being so integrated into Intacct, the IT requirement from an involvement in a project is minimal. We see the majority of companies have their IT spend less than 30 minutes to an hour from project start to finish, which is a really important piece. So let's talk about manual data entry. This is, to me, like the essential reason for AP automation. So, because keying invoices and even rekeying invoices when there are errors, it wastes valuable time. I worked with one AP team that cut processing time from 10 days to just 2, just by automating that data capture. And our tool, Smart Data Extraction, helps you to capture invoices instantly and then automatically can route it for approval. So you're not waiting days for an invoice to be shown in your system or to run through the workflow. Smart Data Extraction from Use happens in a matter of minutes. And that's a really important factor, because again, it's about real-time visibility and streamlining the process and speeding up the processing time. slow approvals. And a lot of times when I'm in a room, I will ask everybody, raise your hand if you've never ever felt that you've had too many slow approvals happening within your environment, within your company. And I can tell you, I can't even remember a single one where I didn't have anybody keep their hand down. Everybody runs into this. This is not a single organizational problem. This is from company to company, probably the most common thing that occurs. And these are frustrating for people in really any organization. No one wants to be the person being chased down, and no one wants to be the one doing the chasing. And we all get that. Nobody wants to be that person. Distributed teams across job sites, they cause delays, and they really can cause even more complexity in the process. A real world example that we had is we had a subcontractor that needed their payment to deliver materials. There was a delay in AP approval, and that delay delayed the entire project by 5 days at a cost of $30,000 to the company. That is a real world example of why customers are coming to use to cut that down and not have those delays in their projects and then costing them money. Because at the end of the day, when you think about when you're going out to bid for a project, every dollar counts. Every dollar is meaningful and every dollar is important to the bottom line. You don't want anything causing you to have unexpected cost. Within the use application, we're able to actually set auto escalation rules for overdue approvals. So you no longer have to do the chasing, and your approvals will be notified as soon as they have a task to perform. They're not having to go through email and look for emails to reply to. It'll actually take them right to the task, right to the invoice to review, and they can even do it in their mobile device. So regardless of where they're at, it's simple, it's easy, and it's clean. All right, if you can't see liabilities in real time, you're driving blind. Data is power. It's power for knowing where you are and where you're going with a project. CFOs, they need to understand where they're at so they can manage their cash. And we talked about it before, but they needed to understand from a liability and cash flow standpoint so that they can make decisions on where the business is going. You need to make sure a vendor like Use, we have for those real-time dashboards that can show you outstanding invoices by job, by vendor, and those are updated automatically. We even have a Excel import option where reporting can be created, tied into Excel, and delivered to construction leaders, and they can update the report directly within the Excel file versus having to go into Use. So there's no more real time than that. There's a nice little refresh button there. They hit the refresh button. Everything shows up, every part of their report. They will no longer lack the visibility that they need to ensure that the business is successful. Outside of your own team, vendors are another incredibly important party. I talk to many clients, and they talk about the years, literally sometimes decades, that they've worked with specific vendors and ensuring that those relationships are strong. Vendors notice slow payments. And a lot of times they'll prioritize other customers who pay on time. That can create delays in your projects, that can create delays in having material be delivered, which then can even create delays in completion of your project, which is a lot of times the last thing that you want to have happen, because delays in your project can potentially delay the start of other projects or even potentially delay bidding on other projects. Nobody wants that. You want a self-service portal like Use has where vendors can go in. They can access, specifically for those vendors that really need it. They can go check the status of the invoices. Have we received it? Has it been paid? So they're no longer flooding your AP team with emails or phone calls. This is about reducing waste. And this is a big time waste for a lot of AP team members, is just answering vendors where things are at. We're trying to make this easy for everybody. So late payments mean missed discounts, and extra fees. In today's climate, construction companies, we all know you can't afford to throw away money due to delays. My advice to you is you want to identify your top 5 vendors by volume, negotiate early pay discounts. You'll likely qualify once your approvals speed up, and Use can assist with that. We can help you identify who those top 5 vendors are. We can even help you identify where you're buying products from different vendors, which then gives you the ability to negotiate and potentially drive down your cost, ensuring that your cash is increasing. And this is a really important factor for many, many businesses out there. And so let's talk about fraud. I'm sure you all know someone, or maybe you've been affected yourself by fraud. Fraud schemes like fake vendors are exploding. Concerns about the risk of fraud is the #1 concern that AP leaders have about the way their department operates these days. And let's be real, it's almost impossible to identify fraud through human intervention today. You want a tool like Use that can ensure that when we're reviewing documents, that we're helping to identify potential fraudulent invoices, calling those out to you, so you have the flexibility to reach out to those vendors, have those conversations. And I will tell you that we've had a few vendors where customers have reached out. They were so grateful that they were able to find out that, hey, an invoice of theirs had been taken and used, that they were able to proactively reach out to some other customers to ensure those customers weren't getting hit by the same type of fraudulent attempt. No better relationship than when you can bring something to your vendor and help them ensure that their business remains strong and that their customers are also not getting hit, not just you. That's a really big piece. And then let's talk about integration gaps. This is probably one thing that may not come to your mind. Disjointed AP and ERP systems can create rework. We want to minimize your efforts, not add to them. You want a solution that offers those pre-built connectors for Intacct. Setup is fast and updates are automatic. Mentioned before, IT departments, there's probably one task, and a lot of times we find that in the AP team, there's an AP administrator can take care of that task for them, so IT doesn't have to get engaged at all when it comes to the actual implementation of a solution. And that's a really important piece. From an integration standpoint, Use has probably the strongest Intacct integration out there. Not only when invoices come in, are we posting bills, are we converting POs, are we converting subcontract POs, but we're also creating the bills within the application, we're creating the invoices within the Intacct application, and we're sending things into Intacct like the invoice image. If you're attaching things to the document, like maybe you're attaching pictures of the actual work that was done, maybe you're attaching an AIA document, maybe you're attaching a lien waiver to that invoice. All of that goes into Intacct after it's been put into Use. Really important piece. And it's not just a link. It's actually loaded into Intacct. So if you do have users that for whatever reason, you don't want to give them access to the Use application, they can still see everything. Because we're also sending audit trails and we're sending comments. And that's a really big piece because there's not another solution out there that does all of that like we do. We want to ensure that whether you're looking inside of the Use application or whether you're looking inside of Intacct, all of your information, all of your data is there. So let's talk about purchase to pay automation. It really covers everything. So purchase orders, subcontract orders, invoice capture, invoice matching, approvals, posting, payments, everything that gives you visibility, control, and tracking. And use is able to assist in every step of the way. So from a PO slash subcontract order standpoint, that automatically syncs into use along with your vendors, your accounts, your job codes, your job types, all of that. Use is going to actually do the capture of those invoices to then automatically use AI to match them and then help route them to the appropriate workflows so you don't have to have human intervention to tell that invoice where it should go. And that's a really important distinction. Use wants minimal human intervention because at the end of the day, all that means is you're spending less time in the AP process, your invoices are moving faster through the process, and getting to that payment step. Now, the great part is when it comes to payments, doesn't mean you have to make the payment right away. You may choose to if you can get an early pay discount. But at the end of the day, what our biggest job is to give you visibility on the status of an invoice from start to finish and let you release it at the time that makes sense. For example, we have customers today using our payment process. And some, they want to hold on to that invoice that before they send that payment till the very last day of the month, kind of like the old check run processes that a lot of companies still do. They can still do that with our application. They can choose exactly when a payment is processed, giving you complete control over how payments are sent. So let's talk about a real world example and a client success story. So Norman Dow Roofing, Russell, he's the controller there. They're processing about 300 invoices a month, but they're very, very seasonal. So the average over the course of a year is about 250. Over 100 employees. They were established back in 1999, so been doing business for 26 years, and they're in Winnipeg, Manitoba. One of the things they specialize in is flat roofing, re-roofing, new installations, metal decking and siding maintenance, and leak repairs. One of the things Russell told us was that before AP automation, their biggest pain points was that they were fully manual. They were doing paper-based AP, printing, scanning, data entry, and approval routing. Imagine that you have an AP clerk who every invoice gets received, physically printing out those invoices. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of paper. That's a lot of cost. Then there's a storage of those papers. So that means they have to have space and filing cabinets for everything to go into. That was a huge problem for them. They also had limited visibility into traceability of invoice status because everything was on paper. So if a question came up, they had to flip through paper to figure out where it was and what they were waiting on. And Russell was really overwhelmed during busier periods because he couldn't justify adding more staff because they weren't busy 12 months out of the year. It was a very seasonal business for them. So when they started looking at an AP solution, they wanted something that tightly integrated with their ERP. They wanted to prioritize the ease of implementation, automation capabilities, and really transparent approval workflows. Now, why they chose Use? We have pre-built integrations. That was huge for them with that two-way sync. They needed that as part of their integration. Even more powerful, they wanted an AI-powered multi-channel invoice capture with three-way matching and automatic coding. What the multi-channel invoice capture means is they didn't want to have just invoices that were sent to an AP box. They would have actual employees out in the field who would be handed invoices from a subcontractor or from a vendor, and they would then have to transport those documents back to HQ, and hopefully they made it. They wanted the ability to have their users manually upload through taking a picture in a mobile device, so that way they didn't have to worry or be concerned if an invoice was lost in transit. And they also wanted to ensure that they had clear real-time visibility with a cloud-based document access, meaning no matter where they were at, they could view, they could create reports, they could see and have access to the information they needed to have access to. So we had a very smooth, quick rollout, and the approval workflows were synced very quickly. They had no disruption during their seasonal ramp up, and they actually saw a huge amount of time saved immediately. So some of the results they gave us, they had a dramatic reduction in manual steps and paperwork. They had a faster, more reliable invoice processing with fewer errors. They had 100% transparency and traceability in AP. There was less follow-up that was needed. And then they had the scalability to handle seasonal invoice volume spikes without spending a ton of time either through overtime or trying to hire part-time resources to fill the gap, which didn't really work for them. Russell, as controller, was actually spending a lot of time outside of normal working hours, missing a lot of events. We didn't want that, and that's where use can help to reduce that. So a quote that Russell actually gave us was that he's confident that the team has welcomed the reduction in paperwork. They're returning from job sites to no folders waiting on their desk, and they now have a software that streamlines their task, not complicates them. So why now is the time to automate? This is a really important question I'm sure a lot of people ask. Margins are razor thin. Labor is scarce. We're seeing less and less, college graduates in the accounting area, and projects are tighter. Automation will help you do more with less. Don't wait until errors cost you the next big job. Start now, stay competitive, because your competitors are going to start looking at things like AP automation. And that's not only from a bid standpoint to help drive their bid costs down, but it's also from a employee and hiring standpoint. I can't stress this enough. I've listened to a lot of podcasts on this, and a lot of these podcasts are talking about how as people come out of college and out of university, they want to work with companies that embrace technology. They don't want to go in and just do this manual effort anymore. They embrace a purpose, and technology for a lot of people today is that purpose. So we want to make sure that we're not only helping your business today, but we're helping your business every day in the future. So if you have any more questions, we're happy to help here at Use. Please drop any questions you have into the chat. There's no such thing as a bad question. I always like to say that, because when it comes to optimizing your processes, we want to ensure that you get that ability to ask whatever questions that you have. So I really want to thank Brian and the entire team here for the opportunity to let me be here today with you. So Brian, I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton back over to you now.
Thanks, Jared. A great presentation. And I know it helps to have a great product to present, but you're really good at this. So thank you for doing that. Are you available to, because I can't answer these couple of questions that have come in. I'm going to need your help.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, good. And we have a couple of minutes, so I want to talk about a couple of things. Number one, if there's a question that you'd like to present to Jared, I can get that added to the couple that we have and answer that in here in just a minute. And Jared, a little bit of an audible for you. You're the one that's sharing the screen. It would be possible, if you want to cue it up, to show us maybe the product in 3 or 4 minutes or less, or maybe show us your favorite part of the product. That's something that I think we have time for. But in the meantime, while you think about that, and while our audience submits the burning questions that they have into that Q&A function within the Zoom toolbar, let me take just a moment to do a bit of advertising. I'm available to speak to construction back office professionals, CPA firms, Texas CPA Society local chapters, CFMA local chapters, or other professional groups on the topics that are on the screen now, all of which speak directly to construction industry professionals. That first one, accelerating the financial close, automation today, AI tomorrow, very much like what Jared shared with us today, but expands beyond that purchase to pay workflow to all areas of the construction back office and process. Changing technology Creative Disruption in the Accounting Profession, Thriving in a Blockchain Economy. That presentation also has connection points to construction, especially in a day and age when we read about the adoption of stable coins as a currency payment method being supported by mainstream financial institutions. And then that last presentation entitled Prosperity Through Recurring Revenue, Unleashing the Power of the Subscription Economy. That applies to specialty industry subcontractors providing service maintenance agreements to businesses or consumers after the project completes. And in addition to these three presentations, we have a lot of ways for you to meet the Ledgerable team. And that next slide, Jared shows a couple of those. First of all, we'll be presenting a webinar on September 17th around construction key performance indicators. You'll want to scan that QR code in the left-hand box there to pre-register for that on September 17th. Once again at noon, once again another hour of CPE credit. That middle box shows that we'll be at the CFMA Lone Star Conference scheduled in San Antonio in late October there. And you could come by our booth there and chat with us, or we'll be up in the Midwest at the Chicago Build Expo a little bit later in that month, and we'll have a booth there. We'd love to visit with you there. And then I'll be speaking directly to the Corpus Christi and Beaumont local TXCPA chapters on the topic Accelerating the Financial Close, Automation Today, AI Tomorrow. If you're a member of those chapters in those cities, I hope you'll come out for the presentation and the CPE credit that I know the Texas Society will award you for that. Okay, Jared, we've got some questions here, and I'm going to answer or ask you these first, and you can let us know what you think. And then if you do have an opportunity or would like to show us your favorite part of the product, I think we have time for that. But the first question, what is the difference between Use and the Sage product that does automation? This is a question from one of our attendees.
That's a great question. I think the biggest piece, I'm actually going to share my screen. And Brian, can you confirm that you can see the Use application?
It looks great.
Perfect. Okay. I think one of the biggest differences between the application between us and Sage, one, a workflow that cannot be met. We have the most adaptable and easy to use workflow in all solutions out there. But another big piece, it really is, there's two pieces to this. One is what we call Use Protect. And Use Protect is a really important feature in the Use product. Now, I want to talk just for a second about that, because I think this is a really important piece, and this is a really good part of your question here. So Use, we have something called Smart Fate Detection, and that deploys AI-driven technologies to detect fraudulent documents. And we're doing that through a couple different features. One is we're actually looking at the metadata of a document as it comes over, and we're looking for anomalies, even at the pixel level, which is really important because it helps us to identify potentially altered information such as amounts, bank details, dates, beneficiaries, things like that. And additionally, we also work to find issues with documents where the file metadata has been changed as well, because documents can potentially have been edited after they were created to where there's not information that's been altered, there's actually information that's been erased. And so Use has the flexibility to see that at the beginning and stop and prevent it. And when they come into the Use application, we call this out with this fraud detection tab, and we actually show the companies, hey, here's the information that we're seeing. And we're actually, like in this case, we're saying it's obscuring something. So a fraudulent actor has actually pasted this information over something else. And this information just happens to be banking data. That's really important because most fraud is detected after payments have been made. Now, what does that mean to you? That means that you're now having to work with your local authorities. You're having to work with your bank to try to recoup some of those funds, if not all of them. That doesn't always happen. So that's one really big distinguisher as well. But a one that I really, really enjoy and our customers are absolutely loving is our vendor statements. And this is a really important piece. And I apologize because I wasn't ready to show today, Brian. So in my application, I need to reset it because it's been like 3 months since I last did it. But essentially, when a statement comes in, our tool is capturing it line by line by line. And that's really important because what we're doing is we've seen, customers have to go through those statements and they're usually spending 45 seconds to a minute and a half per line. And so when you start seeing these statements that are 50 to 100, lines themselves, you're talking about hours that are being spent by users just to verify that everything is good from that statement. Within the use application, as we extract the data, you can see over here on my screen how these are in blue. This is a blue hyperlink. If I click this button once and twice, if you don't see a black number here, meaning there's no hyperlink, that means every invoice on that statement has been received. So it may have taken you just hours to go through and confirm if every invoice was received or not. Just took seconds. Huge cost savings. And then over here is a matching. I click it once. This red X means that, hey, there's an issue between the data on the statement versus the data on the document. And that's a really important feature, again, because what you just saw in action was roughly 30 seconds of work, where somebody might have spent a half hour, hour, or longer going through this line by line inside of Sage Intacct or within another tool. So I hope that helps, Brian. I hope that covers what you were looking for.
Yeah, that's
What the
great.
user
And
was
I've got
looking for.
another great question here
Sure.
that I want to follow up on that. But before I do, when you talked about metadata and AI being able to evaluate metadata, you're talking about AI being able to do something that the human eye cannot perceive, correct?
100%. Yeah, as I mentioned during the presentation, these are things that a human just isn't going to catch. I'm going to use a really big word here, Brian, and it's called steganography. It's a PhD word. That's what we like to call it. But it really is the going through of the data itself. Again, looking at the pixels, looking at things that your human eye just isn't going to see. I mean, if we go back to this document here, we have no idea as we look at this invoice that this was pasted over something. There's no way for you to note that unless you were to ask the vendor every single time an invoice came through. In this case, I can quickly catch this. I quickly see it because guess what? Use caught it for me. And this is a $3,600 invoice. So it's not huge, right? But every invoice that comes in, a lot of times, is just that test, right? It's that fraud person testing your system, testing your capabilities to confirm if it gets through or not. Because the next one might be a lot bigger, and they're just hoping you haven't caught it, or they're hoping you haven't changed. And that's a really big distinction too.
Yeah, yeah. The next one could be $36,000.
Exactly. I actually was talking to one client. It was over 50,000. They wound up getting $49,500 back, but they spent hundreds of hours between their authorities and their bank to get make that happen. That's so why they got money back. There was still a huge labor cost to that, and that's a really important distinction. I mean, every minute, every hour counts. Every hour you go and you're spending fighting fraud after it's already happened versus catching it at the very, very beginning, that's time that you can't spend doing something else. Time that you can't spend being more efficient for the company, finding potential ways to, get better costs from your vendors or improve the relationships or do special projects that are needed for the CFOs and controllers out there that are looking to make decisions about where the business is going to next.
Yeah. All righty. Here's another question. Can use handle multiple companies?
Absolutely. That's actually a really great question. And so, for example, I'll just slide this screen over here. I'm sure most of you know this screen. I hope that you do. This is inside of Intacct directly, right? And
Right.
so this is our sandbox. So all of these are different, companies and entities. And so we're able to bring those into our application and process documents through. So if I bring this back over here, you can see that we can distinguish between the different entities that the invoices are for. And so that way we ensure when we're posting back into Intacct that it's posting back to the appropriate entity itself. And Brian, if you don't mind, this might actually be a really great time for me to open up since we're talking about, I have Intacct open here, actually showing you what Intacct looks like with use. And so I mentioned before, setting the invoice image, there it is right there. Here's our audit trail that syncs over automatically. Here's even some of those pictures that I talked about. So these aren't links. Like these are actively really right there as soon as you bring up the invoice. And this right here is actually a converted subcontract order. We even, Brian, have the flexibility to have a single invoice against multiple subcontract orders, multiple projects, multiple jobs, whatever flexibility your customers need, Use can support because we're infinitely adaptable.
So this bill and the accompanying picture came through Use on its way to Sage Intacct Construction.
That's correct. This was the invoice that came in, and then the company, so in this case, we were doing this as an example. We were attaching pictures within our application so they could see how it all transpires and how it all syncs over into the Intacct application. So when we talk
Awesome.
about having the best integration with Intacct, we mean it.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, we've got 2 minutes. So this is perfect for this last question, I think. How user-friendly is the mobile app? Our current provider has a mobile app that's hardly usable. That's our
Yep.
last question.
Great question. I will tell you it's very easy to use. One great thing about our mobile application when you're using it is it'll actually show you the image of the invoice as you pull it up. So you're not just seeing the header information or the line information. And then there's a nice little 3 dots that give you the ability to hit the 3 dots to say approve for your approvers or to edit information if you're a reviewer. So I will tell you, it's actually a really fun story, and I will tell it in 1 minute for you here, Brian.
Okay.
So now we have a minute left. But
Yeah.
the reason that Use has a mobile app now is we re-platformed back right before COVID in 2020. And before that, we had our application and we had a mobile app. But when we re-platformed, we didn't go back to a mobile app because Use can be accessed on any browser. So if you actually if you're a Use user and you open up your mobile device and you go into the browser, internet browser, you could actually log into Use directly from there. So that was how we were having our users do it. But then we had a specific company who came to me one day and was like, hey, our CEO refuses to move over to the newer version of Use until you have that mobile app. And so we knew we were committed to our customer that not only were we going to make that move and give them back the mobile app, we were going to ensure that it was very, very easy to use. Because at the end of the day, 90% plus of users on the mobile app are approvers. And I will tell you right now, approvers need the most simplistic approval process possible because the easier it is for them, the faster they get it done. And that's what we're committed to.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jared. You're great at what you do. And of course, you have a great product. And I want to remind everyone that Use for Sage Intacct Construction is Ledgerable's preferred provider for accounts payable automation. So I thank you. And I hope you'll hang on to the line after we sign off here in a minute, Jared, so that we can say our proper goodbyes. But in the meantime, I would like also to thank Shirley and Sophia, who work behind the scenes to make Jared and I look very capable and smart. And so thank you for that.
Yes.
They are the ones that create these great graphics, the pop-up questions, and then fulfill on all the promises that we make. And I want to remind everyone also that we have a webinar coming up on September 17th, and that will focus on construction KPIs. So until then, have a great month, and we look forward to seeing you in September.